Welcome to the first part of the Blender Masterclass for Smart Modeling. In this series, we will model many classic things, as panels can be quite detailed, like in a neoclassical style. We will start with this door here. You can take a look at it by pressing Z and going into wireframe mode to see how the door looks. The door is from my Doors asset pack, which I have on the Fab Marketplace, and I think it fits quite well. Let's select the door and go into Edit mode and then into Edge Select mode. Now I can select these edges and bevel them. Of course, we can also add an edge loop here. But as you can see, the edge loops go upward here. That is because I already have a slope here on the top. A bevel does not do that. It stays straight. If you still want to correct something, for example, if I move this with double G, I do an edge slide. Of course, it goes upward here. In this case, it makes a lot of sense to just press G and Z to keep the line straight. The UV map will shift though. But what you can do otherwise is bevel it. Then the UV map does not shift. And then here at the top, do the edge at the end again with the edge slide down, because it does not get any more slanted there, just upward. But of course, you can just bevel it now. That was just a demonstration. Now bevel all these panels here. I select the entire edge loop, of course. A bit high here. So I also need this here to add edge loop cuts, so I have faces I can select in the middle. We can simply add a loop cut here by pressing Ctrl R, like this, and I bevel this now. No, I will not set it manually. Same problem as before. It is better to make it a bit too big and then reduce it. It is just a bit hard to see with this door here, but here it should actually go out and not directly in. So I can select through these panels here so they are selected on both sides. And then we simply start with an inset, and I place it here so I have an edge to bevel later. I will push all of this out later with Shrink Fatten. I add another inset and another inset. Of course, this is not 100% accurate. Here it is exact, but that is fine. It does not have to be perfect here. The main thing is maybe to have a line here that fits, and I will use that as a reference. So I check once more if I have everything here. Good. Now I press Ctrl+ on the numpad multiple times until I get here. And as I said, I push this out. If I press E, it pushes it up for some reason. Right-click to cancel, and then I can press Alt-S and push it out by moving the mouse. The great thing is that it does this on both sides simultaneously. Now I press Ctrl- on the numpad. No, I do not just deselect everything here. I simply press Ctrl- on the numpad. And now I do an extrude again. Right-click to cancel and Alt-S. This time I push it inward. So we will have a bevel here. So I will press Ctrl- on the numpad again and extrude again. Right-click, cancel and push inward again. Now be careful not to let the other side come through, but it can be very thin. Such panel doors are actually relatively thin here. We can roughly check if maybe this length is the same as this length. If you want to do it precisely, you can also enable edge length here and then briefly check which edge is longer. But of course, it is very difficult to see since this one is diagonal, so it does not work anyway. I can turn it off again. Now I undo so that this is selected again. I do not feel like selecting all of this manually again, and then I press Ctrl- again. Now I am at the mid panel, and it goes out a bit again, but I will not bevel anything here. It is fine like this. So now we can start with this here. It is hard to see, but it is actually not straight. It just looks that way because of the orthographic view. It is actually a bit curved. How do I get it curved now here? I can, of course, press Ctrl+. And now, to get an edge around here, I can simply do an inset. I place it roughly in the middle. Now, I just need to see why this inset did that to me. If I do an inset and it comes here, I need to enable edge rail so it does not come out. I do not want it to come out. That's what she said. What I want now is select loops, boundary of selected. And now exactly this edge here is selected. And I can now push it inward with Alt-S as usual. And we can bevel all of this. Once more, with a few more segments, and now we see that this here is rounded. Now we can press Ctrl+ again until we get here. And then we go to Select Loops, Boundary of Selected. We will need this more often. You can simply right-click on it and then add it to Quick Favorites. For me, it is already in there, which is why it says Remove there, and you can access it with Q. You can also remove it just as quickly. So it makes sense to add some things you use regularly. You do not clutter the menu. It is also easy to delete. And the great thing about it is that it is mode dependent. Object mode and edit mode have different options here as pose mode. So once again, I will show it. This here is selected and then boundary of selected. Then this here is selected and we can bevel this again. And I go very high with my segments here. 22 segments would be a bit excessive. I set it to 13. From my experience, 13 works quite well when we select a profile type here. For example, this one. 13 looks one of the most solid here. And now we press Ctrl+ again and again. Now we have a problem here. Namely, if I do boundary of selected again now, I also have this edge selected here. That means if I bevel this here, I bevel this edge here too. But if I pressed Ctrl+, there is now way too much geometry in the center, and I can no longer get here in time to close the selection. So either you can now simply select this manually on all panels, or you go into Face Select mode and select additional faces here while holding Shift and Box Select. I think that is easier in this case. Luckily, there is no geometry on the other side that we absolutely do not want to select. If that were the case, we would be doomed. Then we can continue here with Boundary of Selected. And here we add a bevel. But I want a completely normal bevel here, a super ellipse with a few fewer segments. Alternatively, what I just noticed, we can also add these things I have here to a vertex group. Assign, then boundary of selected, then I add my bevel here. Now I press Ctrl+ again, and now I can deselect in the vertex group. And now I have only this selected again. And this is how you can make a really nice classic door. I would also add a bevel modifier and a weighted normal modifier to make it look even better here. So what do we do here with these hinges that have 4 edge loops? I add these 4 edge loops, and now I will simply press Ctrl B to bevel them, but only with one segment. And then Ctrl minus and push this inward with Alt S. Of course, you can press Ctrl plus. It does not work? Then I can also simply select these directly and bevel them again if I want. And then you can see if you want these elements or whatever, they now go into the door. And you can also delete the faces going into the door. They should, of course, be here at the front. And since I took 4 here, I will also take 4 here. But of course not select the ones at the top, and they can theoretically go into the door frame. So this would theoretically make sense, and I simply add a shade auto smooth to it. It is so small. I do not need a bevel here. We can of course copy all of this up with Alt D in object mode. So, and now the handle, which will of course be a bit more exciting. It is a bit hard to see. I will hide this door so we can see the handle a bit better. You will not be able to see it perfectly now, but I will try. Let's start here at the front. I extrude it, scale it down, then I extrude it again to here. Add an edge loop here. I push it out with Alt S. You can bevel this. Then I bevel this one too, but not as extremely. We can bevel this. And now we can add an edge loop here, a very small bevel. And these 2 edges, we can also theoretically do select boundary loops here. I push these now with it. I scale them apart a bit, and I bevel these now. And then I bevel this with a few more segments because it is larger. There is also a bevel in the middle here. It is like a small button. Push it out a bit further. And on the side, you can just be creative. You can barely see anything. I could, of course, check how I did it, but I think it is similar to the other side. And then here comes an inset. Here I add an edge loop. It comes out a bit, then select boundary loops, bevel. And then we can add 2 bevels here, add 2 edge loops here. I bevel these now very lightly with just one segment. And then I select this and push them inward a bit. Although no, I also push this here inward a bit, so that I have these slight steps. So now I look at this from above and make it a bit slanted like this. And to make the edges here stand out better, I will bevel all of them again. But one segment is enough here. We do not have to go overboard with the poly counts. And of course, if you want, you can also add an inset here and then push it inward so that it comes out like the handle here. So, and we can make this look nicer with a weighted normal. This here needs to be deleted. And ideally, we also add a bevel here so it looks good too. Then we can unhide the door again with Alt H, and then the thing is there. To get this on the other side, I would simply mirror it now, namely mirror with the door object as the origin on the y-axis. And with that, a door mesh like this is done in around 20 minutes. I hope this was clear, and I hope to see you in the second part, where we will build a neoclassical kitchen. I repeat many of the stuff from here, but a kitchen is not symmetrical like this door. Thanks for watching.